Welcome back to the Humble Healer podcast with Dr. Quang Lei, family physician. Today, I will be talking about forgiveness as a path to contentment. But before I talk about forgiveness, I want to discuss a bit about contentment. Sometimes I use happiness as a goal for each of us to reach, but I think contentment may be a better term. For example, one day when I went around and asked my coworkers what their happiness scale to see where things are, and people reported anywhere between a 2 all the way to a 9. But one of the coworkers that I worked with, she said that she lost her father last week or the week before. So how could you be happy about that? So I think a better way to approach things that we experience in lives is contentment. You can still experience loss with contentment, face heartbreaks without being broken, and hardship without being hard, as we talked about in the previous episodes. In a survey, we refer to Finland as the happiest country on earth in the World Happiness Ranking. And the question that was asked was not about about how happy the Finnish was or anyone that was surveyed, but they asked how satisfied the people are with their lives. Then satisfaction is a feeling of contentment rather than overwhelming happiness. And people in Finland have a high level of life satisfaction. And the concept of happiness does not mean that very intense emotion of happiness. It's more like a constant feeling of being content with your life and what you have. It's more of a quiet feeling. So maybe it's easier to be happy in that way than it would be to seek intense feelings and intense experience of happiness all the time. Actually, there is a disease called mania in which people feel euphoric all the time. But then on the flip side, when they get depressed, they are even more depressed than people with depression. So in the movie Inside Out, we talk about joy represent happiness. And you can't be joyful all the time, but you can certainly be incontent with things that happen in your life. So instead of looking for euphoria, you can try looking for things in your life that make you feel content, like a cup of good coffee, a trusty car that never breaks down. This morning, I was able to hit a few golf balls with a good friend of mine and share his company and enjoy his company and the nice foliage in New England. And I really, truly enjoy that. Grateful to have time for those nice moments. So the bottom line is that learn and train yourself to live in contentment. And that's trainable, that's learnable. And that's the purpose of a lot of my episodes here is to show you the path to contentment. And some of that is happiness, but not all of it. So let's talk about forgiveness now. In the Book of Joy by Doug Abrams, interviewing of the Dalai Lama Desmond Tutu, that's one of the pillars of happiness. I would say contentment. In the history of South African, the apartheid system with the oppression of the Black South Africans, there was brutalities and treatment of those victims. Nelson Mandela, after he became president, asked the Archbishop Desmond Tutu to set up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And the purpose of this commission is to promote forgiveness and confrontation of perpetrators by the victims or the victims' families, and then forgive them so that both the victims and victims' family can move on, as well as the perpetrators, after admitting the actions that they did, as well as society and the country as a whole without bloodshed or further bloodshed. And they did a great job with that, as we learned that the country, even though it's not perfect, but no country is, there was not a lot of bloodshed that happened after Nelson Mandela took over power. There was another example that Desmond Tutu also mentioned about the power of forgiveness. This involved a story of an American student who volunteered to work for an amnesty organizations um, in South Africa. And she dropped off one of her friends in a township in South Africa. She was brutally killed. So her parents flew from California to support actually the amnesty for the perpetrators, and then set up foundation named after their daughter to employ these same men in the process of helping the people of that township. They did so to help heal South Africa, but also because that's what their daughter would have wanted. And that's their way of honoring their daughter, and also their way of being able to move on and have a disclosure, have a closure. Without that forgiveness, the parent would never been able to get over what happened to their daughter. Both Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama believe that no one is incapable of forgiving, and no one is unforgivable. The Dalai Lama prays for compassion for not only those who suffer, but also for those who create the sufferings. Take in their anger and hatred and return with love and compassion, because those people may be creating a future for their own suffering with the bad karma, as he believes. He also clarifies that forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. We choose forgiveness over hatred, but we will not let that happen again. And also remember what was done. Forgiveness will not stop us from seeking justice for the perpetrators. Forgiveness is also not the same as approving other wrongdoings. You can take action against their actions, but you choose forgiveness over hatred for the wrongdoers. Forgiveness can happen without the perpetrators being present. It can be done as you find in your heart to truly forgive the perpetrators, even after they passed away or no longer in your life. You're doing this to help yourself to heal and to move on. Desmond Tutu said, forgiveness is the only way to heal ourselves and free us from the past. Without forgiveness, we will be jailed by our bitterness and anger, with the perpetrators being the jailer, as well as the bitterness and anger and resentment that accompany that. Forgiveness allows us to take back control of our feelings and fate, and it sets us free from those who harmed us. In the movie Unbroken, that was directed by Angelina Jolie about an American pilot who happened to be her neighbor, and who was still skateboarding when he was 90 years old. And he was captured by the Japanese after floating and drifting on the Pacific Ocean for 3,000 miles and about 45 days, and then end up being captured by Japanese and was very poorly treated. At one point, he was punched on the face about 900 times by other prisoners upon the order by the Japanese guard. After he was released, he went home a bitter man, descended into alcoholism and suffered from marital troubles. And then he found spiritual support in Christianity that taught him the power of forgiveness. So he went back to Japan. He went to the prison that imprisoned the Japanese guard and told them that he forgave them, and was able to go home and move on with his life and become a happier husband and father and so on. So many examples. Ray Hinton, death row inmate, black man who spent 30 years in prison for a crime he did not commit, in solitary confinement, with 1 hour per day allowed outside. When asked if he was angry at those who put him into prison, he said, "If I'm angry and unforgiving, then they will have taken the rest of my life." There's more to his story in my next episode. Very inspirational story. When hurt or harm happens, one can choose the cycle of revenge or the cycle of forgiveness. Do we want to hurt back and continue the cycle of revenge, or heal and break it off? It takes so much strength and courage and humility in order to start the cycle of forgiveness and break the cycle of revenge, of vengeance. Desmond Tutu said, "Those who think forgiveness is a sign of weakness have not tried it. Revenge or an eye for an eye will leave the world blind." Unforgiveness can lead to resentment, anger, and hostility and hatred that can be very self-destructive, both physically and mentally. It raises blood pressure and heart rate, compromises our immune system, and makes us feel less in control. Studies have shown forgiving attitude in animal, domestic, and wild alike. Only one not shown to have this is domestic cats. Someone must risk returning injury with kindness, or hostility will never turn to goodwill. So the wise always give without expecting gratitude. I hope you find this piece helpful. It's another pillar of inner happiness or contentment. The previous one was gratitude. Every once in a while, I will introduce one more pillar of contentment, and I hope you practice that and find contentment in your life. Take care and have a good day.